So good to have you back. Yeah. So, this past Wednesday night, we had our annual Thanksgiving Eve communion and candlelighting service here at the church. And it's a service that we just love to offer every year because we have the opportunity to join with all of you in expressing the gratitude we feel for the many blessings that have come into our lives over the past year. And we also have that opportunity to share in a time of communion with one another and to acknowledge the light of God that is present within us, shines forth from each and every one of us. And after the service was over and the evening was coming to its point of completion for me, I popped my head into Reverend Bob's office to say goodnight. And before I could get too much out, he jumped up, he stood in front of me, smiling from ear to ear, and he said, "Eileen, I am ready for Halloween." Does anybody else feel that way today? You know, as you've moved through just these past few days, have you found yourself asking yourself, where did this year go? It can't possibly be time for Christmas already. You're like Reverend Bob, you too just might be feeling ready for Halloween. And for many of us, I think this happens, very regularly, just about every year. Every year tends to move by even more quickly than the one before. And it's really, if you think about it, it's not too hard to understand why that might be the case. We are surrounded by and at times seemingly inundated by these energies around us that would tell us to hurry up, focus our attention on what's coming, no matter what it is or when it's actually supposed to arrive. And this can really be true around the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. Every year the holidays on the calendar are talked about so much sooner than they were the year before. We barely got past Christmas last year before all of the candy and cards and decorations for Valentine's Day were already on the store shelves. And the decorations and everything for Christmas this year were on the shelves long before the candy for Halloween. And then, of course, we have the internet and technologies and social media that's all available today. Information can be transmitted from point A to point B as quickly as just clicking a button. And even with modern technology, we also still get the paper reminders that there's a holiday coming, all the advertisements. I woke up Thursday morning, went outside to get my paper, and I swear it weighed about 5 pounds with all of the ads. So is it any wonder that we thought that it might be a good idea to have a lesson today that's titled, "Take a Breath"? And over the past week as I was in the midst of the busyness of my life and witnessing the busyness that was happening all around me, I started thinking about, where do I begin, to create this lesson about taking a breath? Because all around me, I saw things other than taking a breath. All the stores that were advertising, being open every hour of the day or night, starting on Thanksgiving and through the whole weekend. My personal email inbox was filling up with all of the requests and advertisements from the vendors and merchants, advertising what they would appreciate my buying from them. I turned on the TV and the news is showing the families and people that are just setting up the camp in front of the various stores days before the doors were going to open and the particular item they wanted even being available. But even in the midst of all that, I realized that this really isn't a phenomenon that hits only during Thanksgiving or Christmas. It's exaggerated during this time of year because it's something that touches so many people on a large scale at the same time in much the same way. But I believe that this energy of hurry up, be the best, be first, it's present every day. Because when you think about it, the internet and technology isn't just here at Christmas. We access it, we receive from it every single day. There's always a sale going on somewhere. Our families still need us. Our work still brings us projects, schedules, and deadlines throughout the entire year. But I think the difference is that our individual day-to-day lives and the hectic pace at which they can sometimes move, they're more personal and they're more unique to us than the common hecticness that we experience as a whole, particularly this time of year. And so this whole idea of taking a breath, it applies whether we're in a season or not. being present to the moment, living more from a place of awareness, and having a sense of balance between all of our to-dos and our do-nothings is something that we need to incorporate into our lives every day. So when I find myself feeling that life is moving too fast, that I am moving too fast, I go back to one of the best illustrations I have yet to find of a reminder of how it is that we can slow down, the importance of slowing down, the importance of taking a breath. And it's a story that we find in the Bible about Jesus, Mary, and Martha. And it's in the 10th chapter of Luke's Gospel, and I'd like to share it with you this morning. It says, while Jesus and his disciples were traveling, Jesus entered a village where a woman named Martha welcomed him as a guest. She had a sister named Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to his message. By contrast, Martha was preoccupied with getting everything ready for their meal. So Martha came to him and she said, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to prepare the table all by myself? Tell her to help me. And the Lord answered, Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. One thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the better part. It won't be taken from her. So now, without any self-judgment, without labeling yourself good or bad, right or wrong, just silently consider, are you relating now to Martha or Mary? And if I had to guess, I would venture to say that on this day, this time of year, we're all really able to easily relate to Martha. As we read this story in light of the current season, Martha represents the hecticness that is all around us. And Mary represents the state of being present to the moment. And what's important, and the reason that I asked you not to label your own realization as good, bad, right, wrong, as far as your place in the story today, is because both are needed. Both are necessary. And aspects and qualities of both Martha and Mary are present within each of us. Because you see, life calls us to show up sometimes as Martha. We have responsibilities. We are accountable to any number of people for any number of things. It is a good thing to be in service, to take action, to put ourselves out there in the world. But life also calls us to slow down, as Mary did. To know that we cannot be everything to everyone every day. To remind us to revisit our own priorities often. And to do what I like to call keeping ourselves on our to-do lists. And the key is to find that balance between the two. To have them both coexist within us, just as Mary and Martha coexist as sisters. So the question is, how do we find that balance? How do we create some things that will bring forth more of the Mary in us so that we can take that intentional breath more often? Well, I'd like to offer 4 suggestions just for your consideration to see if they or something like them could be incorporated into your own lives. And the first is what I just mentioned a moment ago. Keep yourself on your to-do list. So often we let go of paying attention to ourselves so that we can pay attention to everybody else. But I think we need to check in every day as well and just ask ourselves on a regular basis, what do I need today? What gift can I offer myself today? And it could be something as simple as taking that literal breath. So many times people will tell me that just by taking a breath of intention, they're able to release any stress or anxiety that they may be experiencing in the moment. Others have shared with me that just becoming still and taking that intentional breath has helped bring forth the clarity that they were seeking in order to make a particular decision in their lives. Taking a breath can really help us refocus and bring our awareness to the moment that we're in. And you can also take a breath in other ways that would feed you and help you to slow down. For me, I have a practice every day, with rare exception, that I read the paper and I do the crossword puzzle that's in it every day. And sometimes it's the first thing I do in the morning with a cup of coffee. Sometimes it's the last thing I do at night with a glass of wine. It just soothes me. It doesn't tax my brain. It doesn't get me upset if I don't feel in every word. It's just something that helps me release the day or prepare for the day. Another thing I like to do is go to coffee houses and just sit there. I drink my coffee. Most of them have fabulous music tracks that are always playing. I listen to the music. I people watch. And sometimes if they have the outdoor setting, you can sit outside and it's a nice day, I'll go out there and sit down and just let nature, the sounds of life around me be a part of the experience. And again, it's just something that soothes my soul. Simple things, little things. It could be any number of things for you. So what else can we do? How else can we bring that balance into our life and have more experiences of sitting at the feet of Jesus? Well, another one that works for me is to watch, or any chance I get, interact with children. Now, I know that might be the new grandma in me that's coming out a little bit more strongly now. But I have found for years that children really help get me focused. They help get me grounded. They help keep me aware of the real priorities in my life. I can remember when my sons were little boys, and if I had had a very stressful or busy day, if I was anxious about anything, oftentimes I would just go into the hallway and stand in both of their bedroom doors and watch them as they slept. I would just sit there and stand there and stare at them, and I'd watch them breathing and just see their little bellies going in and out. I'd look at their faces and just see peace and contentment and innocence on their faces as they slept so soundly. And it would calm me down. They helped me keep my priorities straight when I let the hecticness try to tell me otherwise. And this past week on Tuesday, late in the day, there was something that I had wanted to get accomplished here at the office before leaving. And it took me a little bit longer, actually a lot longer than I thought it was going to. So I was a little bit tense, not much. But then after I got it done, I realized I had to get something down into our prayer room, and so I rushed, downstairs, and I could just feel that energy. I could feel my muscles starting to tight. I could feel the stress coming on. And then I ran out of the prayer room, and I started to rush back towards the elevator to come back upstairs to my office and do whatever needed to be done, and I heard something. I heard a voice that I hadn't heard in a couple of months. I heard Kelly. So I stopped, and then I heard Fred, and then I heard Kelly's husband, Eric. And I knew that if both of them were here, there was a chance that little Tessa was somewhere in the house as well. So I slowed down, and I changed my direction. I left the elevator, I walked across the hallway downstairs, and I entered into the hallway right outside of Fred's office, and there they all were. And it was so good to see Kelly and Eric again. And it's always a pleasure to see Fred, you know that. And Eric's sitting there in the hallway in a chair, and he's got Tessa in his arms. So we exchanged our highs, our hellos, our hugs, and so forth. And then Eric asked me what I thought was the silliest question anyone could ever ask a grandmother. He looked at me and he said, "Would you like to hold her?" And I'm thinking to myself, dude, you're lucky she's not in my car by now. But of course I wanted to hold her. And I did. And the moment she came into my arms, there was no stress. There was no anxiety. I didn't have a schedule. There was nothing that I needed to do. I was holding God in my arms and being present to the love that she is. I was so grateful that I stopped to take a breath. A third suggestion that I'll offer to you today is something that you can give to someone else or open yourselves up to receive from another. It will really help you slow down and let go of any hectic energy, and that is compassion. Compassion, that wonderful quality that brings forth consideration and kindness, caring, understanding. And it's not that you understand or that we understand all the facts around a particular circumstance. We just understand that something is amiss. Think of a time where maybe a friend of yours came into your presence and he or she, they were in tears or just physically, noticeably upset in some way? I mean, did you stop, sit down, and ask them for all the facts before you reached out to them? Or did you just throw your arms around them, take their hand, and just begin offering compassion? And in the moment that you did, didn't you feel completely present to them, to the moment, without any thought of concern or anything else running through your mind? Now think about how you could have that very same experience and have that sense of being present if you offered your compassion during busy and hectic times, not only to your friends, but to a perfect stranger. Over the last several weeks, we've had the opportunity to do that together as a spiritual family. We've come together and we have offered our prayers to all those affected in the Northeast by Superstorm Sandy. We've come together and we've purchased supplies and so forth that went into the creation of the personal care kits that Heart to Heart International is distributing to the folks in the Northeast. We've volunteered this weekend, as I said, to donate goods, time, and so forth to the COP event, helping thousands of people. Our Share the Joy program, you are helping to support that so beautifully. And I would imagine that most of us in this room do not have a personal connection to anyone who's been on the receiving end of these gifts and these programs and these prayers. And yet I firmly believe that each and every one of them has or will very soon feel and experience our compassion. But we can also do this on our own, on a much smaller scale, every day. I was in the grocery store about a week ago. I was just picking up a few items, maybe 5 or 6 things. It was later into the evening. The store wasn't crowded. And so I'm making my way to the front, and I see a register where there's just one person, and she was already at the checkout area. And I thought, well, I'll just go in that line, and the wait's going to be short. So already my mind is on, let's rush, let's get out of here, let's go home, let's make this quick, those kinds of things. And so as I pushed my cart in, I could see that the cashier was, just about clearing the order that the woman had offered, and she was telling her what she owed. And I also noticed that this woman, she was more on the elderly side, and she had a young girl with her that, again, I made an assumption it might have been her granddaughter. Well, she runs her payment card through the machine, and it didn't work. So she ran it again. And then she started to have trouble seeing underneath the little shaded box thing with all the instructions on what to do next when you run your credit or debit cards. And I started to think, okay, I'm going to go to another line. But something in me just stopped me. There was such a feeling, such an intention in that moment for me to stay right where I was and to just send a blessing to this woman, to her young granddaughter, to the cashier, the whole process. And so I began to do so. I even made sure that I wasn't standing with my arms crossed. Anything that would convey frustration or impatience or anything like that, I just started to send a blessing. And so the cashier then begins to tell this woman that her card was rejected. And so the woman needed a few more minutes, again, trying to fumble through a purse, find a wallet, find a card. At the same time, she's trying to keep an eye on the little girl. Well, she finds another card, and she swipes it through the machine. But again, she couldn't see clearly what the machine was asking her to do next. And so I watched as the cashier walked her through the whole process with ease. She kept turning the machine back to her to read what it was saying, then she'd turn it back to give the woman the privacy that she deserved. Back and forth, and the woman checked her out, and everything was completed. Now, if you go to the checkout line and you're literally told what you owe, by the time you swipe your card and get your receipt, it might not even take a minute. Well, this transaction had taken over 10 minutes. And so it was a fairly long time in comparison to what you might expect. And so when I pushed my things up and was at the register, the cashier started to apologize to me for what had just happened. And I told her, I said, that I appreciate her concern for me, but an apology wasn't necessary. And she just cocked her head a little bit as if, well, what do you mean? And I told her, it had been so nice to watch her be in service, helping someone who was having some difficulty. But especially in the days leading into Thanksgiving week in a grocery store, the energy usually is rush in, rush out, get it done, don't anybody get in my way, let's just hurry up the process. And I said, what you did was express patience and a willingness to help. And that expression had been a gift to me. And you see, the woman and her granddaughter, the cashier, me, none of us knew the other. And yet each of us offered and received compassion from one another in some way. And that energy continued to enfold us as we went out into whatever was ours to do the rest of that night. And whatever it was that we were to do that night, I know for myself, and I hold it for them, that it unfolded much more easily, much more gracefully, even filled with joy than it would have had we not all come together and had that time of sharing. It's the little things. The final suggestion that I'd like to offer to you today is the most important, in my view, and it's brought to our attention today through the third character in the Bible story. The suggestion is prayer, and it's represented in that story by Jesus. Mary sat at the feet of Jesus and listened to his teachings. Today, when we become still, when we turn within to prayer, we're sitting at the feet of the Christ in us. When we become still, when we sit in the silence, we're listening for that higher consciousness to come through. We want that higher level of understanding to come through, and so that we can bring our spiritual natures forth in a way that is much more consistent, much more quickly than otherwise, much more powerfully than any of the energies that might be around us. And it's not to negate those outer activities or callings to be in service in any way, but rather it's just to help us slow down, to check in and ask ourselves, what do I really want to do today? Who is it that I am to be in service for today? What are my priorities this day? You see, prayer might not slow down the outer pace around us, but it will absolutely bring calm to our inner reactions and our outer expressions to everything around us. When we bring forth the Mary in us and turn within to that Christ presence, all that the Martha in us is being called to do will be done with greater ease and from a place of love. And we're moving into a time of preparation for Christmas, to experience a reawakening of the Christ in us through the remembrance of the birth of Jesus. Now, if Jesus walked in the room today, he might remind us that we sometimes have the tendency to become worried and distracted by many things. He might tell us that in any moment we can choose the one thing that is necessary, the one thing that is always the better choice, the one thing that can never be taken from us. Today, choose to turn within and make a connection to Spirit. Bring both your Martha and your Mary to sit together at the feet of the Christ in you. Today, throughout the coming holidays, on every day, make a choice to take a holy and sacred breath. God bless you. Thank you.